Morning, everyone. You're learning Mishnah Bikurim, Perek Beis, Mishnah Hey, Chapter 2, Mishnah 5. I dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Miss Shalamas Rabinowitz, Shalamas Bas Rav Yaakov Eliezer. Shumas Meiser Shava Libikurim Mishtei Drachim. Shumas Meiser is equal to Bikurim in two ways. Shumas Meiser is that when a person gives from his produce a tenth to the Levi has to separate a tenth from his tenth to the Kohen. So Trumas Meiser, the Truma of Meiser, is equal to Bikurim b'shtei drachim in two ways. Well, it's Trum b'shtei drachim, and it's similar to Trum in two ways. The telas minatar ala tamei v'shaloi min amukav k'bikurim. It can be taken from pure for impure, and not close by. Not and you don't need them to be what you're separating for. What you're separating the Trumas Meiser for doesn't have to be close to the Trumas Meiser. That's when Shalem and Amukif, they don't have to be in proximity. Bikurim, in that way, it's like Bikurim. Okay, so let's explain. If a person has to separate Truma, and he's got 2 piles of grain, he could actually, and he's got to separate for both piles. So he can separate from one pile for the other pile. I mean, he can separate Truma for the other pile and Truma for his own pile, or whatever way he's going to do it. But he can separate from his pile for another one, as long as they're both tevel. They haven't been what you're separating hasn't been separated yet. You can now separate from this pile for another pile, and then separate for this pile itself. The halacha is that in certain cases, such as in Truma, we do not allow you to go ahead and to separate. We do not allow you to separate from grain that is pure for grain that is impure. We don't let you do that. That is a takana d'Rabbanan that was decreed by the sages. You can't do that, even though they both are the same type. And if the pure grain is considered higher quality than the impure grain, nonetheless, you can't do it. Why can't you do it? Because of another halacha that applies by Truma, and that is that whatever you're separating Truma for, you have produce, and you're separating Truma from the produce, do not permit the produce. Or you're separating Truma from one pile of produce for another pile of produce. So you have to separate, you're not going to separate from that pile. I separate from this pile for that pile. Either way, what the Truma is being separated for, meaning the grain that's going to be now permissible for you to eat, has to be either touching the Truma when it's separated or in close proximity. Now, the sages were concerned that if you're going to be taking Truma from pure grain for impure grain, now, in order to do that, they have to be near each other. The problem is that people are not going to want them to be near each other because you don't want the grain that is tummy that is impure touch the grain that's pure. So if we allow you to separate for pure for impure, we're concerned that you may not do it in close proximity because you don't want them in close proximity. So you won't do them nearby at all. And that would not be a good separation. And therefore, the Chachamim instituted no separating from pure grain for impure grain. You don't do it at all. The two laws are, so when the Mishna said, Truma is similar to Bikurim, that you could take from grain that is pure for grain that's impure, and they don't have to be in proximity of each other. The two things go together. Being that Meiser Sheni, Trumas Meiser, like Bikurim, doesn't have to be in proximity of the grain that's being separated for. Therefore, there's no problem if I separate from pure for impure, because the whole problem of pure for impure is that you may not end up doing it in proximity when you need to because you don't want them to touch each other. So it comes out that Trumas Meiser, which again is you've got the Levi got his Meiser, got his tenth. He has to now separate a tenth from that tenth. Now, if he decides that he has other Meiser that he needs to separate Trumas Meiser from, and he wants to separate from this pile of Meiser, this Meiser Sheni for that Meiser Sheni. So the halacha is, although Truma has to be in proximity of each other, they don't have to be in proximity of each other. You could separate Trumas Meiser from Meiser that didn't have it separated yet for a different pile that didn't have it separated yet, even if they're not near each other. Even though they're not in proximity at all of each other. And therefore, since you could do it that way, there's no concern if one is pure, one is impure, because they don't have to be next to each other. So the whole concern of why you can't do from pure for impure is irrelevant. And the same thing by Bikurim. The Mishna is saying Trumas Ma'aser is similar to Bikurim. Bikurim also doesn't have to be separate when you're separating Bikurim. So for instance, you're taking your first ripened grapes, you're separating from the grapes Bikurim. And you're separating the Bikurim for all the vines that you have, even vines that aren't nearby each other. You can do that. I can separate Bikurim from one vine for all my other vines, even in proximity of each other. That's the law by Bikurim. And therefore, by Bikurim also, if it lands up that, I didn't take my Bikurim until it got separated and all became tummy. And some of the grapes became tummy. And I want to separate from the Bikurim from the pure grapes for the impure grapes. I can do that because there's no issue. There's no issue of the Chamim's problem of doing that is irrelevant about Bikurim because they have to be next to each other. Okay, so that is how Trumas Ma'aser is similar to Bikurim. But now the Mishnah tells us how is it going to be similar to Truma. V'aiseres es hagayren, it forbids the processed grain. The yesh lo shir, and it has a set amount, Truma as Truma does. So what that means is that we know that when you have processed grain, it's fully processed, you may not eat from it at all, not even a snack, until you separate the Truma and the Maasers. You separate the Truma for the Kohen, Maaser Rishon for the first Maaser for the Levi, second Maaser, depending on the year, either for Yerushalayim or goes to the poor. But it's tevel. It's forbidden to eat at all once you go ahead and you separate, before you separate these things from it. Now, after you separate the Maaser for the Levi gets his Maaser, and the Levi now separates Trumas Maaser and give that to the Kohen. Until the Levi separates Trumas Maaser, he can't eat from his Maaser. Even if he received it from the person. This person separated the Maaser, which took off any problems with his grain. But the Maaser Sheni itself is not permitted to the Levi until he separates the Trumas Maaser for the Kohen. So that's what it means. It forbids the processed grain. The processed grain, meaning the Maaser that goes to the Levi that was separated from the processed grain, is not going to be permissible to the Levi until he separates the Trumas Maaser. That's what it means by it forbids the processed grain, as Mishnah concludes, Truma, like Truma. Same halacha by Truma, as we said. You don't separate Truma, your processed grain is forbidden to eat until you do so. The Yesh Lashir. Now, Trumas Maaser has an amount, right? It's 1/10 of a tenth. So it has an amount. As Truma has an amount, as we said, either 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th. It has an amount. It's a set amount. I guess maybe the way to say about Truma is the set amount is the fact that most of the time will be 1/50th because most people are in the middle. But the point is that there is a set amount for Truma, as there is for Maaser, as there is for Trumas Maaser. And in that way, that's the second way that the Trumas Maaser is similar to Truma. It forbids the processed Maaser Rishon until it's separated, as Truma forbids grain before it's separated, and both of them have a set amount. Bikurim doesn't have any of these things. Bikurim, you can finish processing your grain, and you can still eat it before you separate Bikurim. As long as you separated the Trumas and the Maaseris, then you're okay to eat it, even if you didn't separate Bikurim. And as we said before, there is no set amount for Bikurim, even midrabanan, even according to rabbinic law, you can give as much Bikurim or as little Bikurim as you want. Okay, we continue with the laws of Chavetz Chaim, of the laws of Rechilas and the Chavetz Chaim. We are in Klal Test, chapter 9, Sif Yud, paragraph 10. When it comes to this whole discussion, which is warning someone about damage from someone else, being that it's very easy to land up transgressing the prohibition of Rechilas, we need to give examples, specific examples. We need to illustrate the cases here and to discuss it. So that the wise person will then use that as his example for other situations. So here's an example. You see someone who wants to walk into a store to buy some kind of merchandise from someone. And you realize that this person is a simple guy. He's not that sharp at catching people trying to trick him. But he knows the storekeeper that he's walking into. He's just waiting for a guy like this to walk into a store, because this is going to be an easy person to fool. In B'schaira, whether it be the quality of the merchandise, or with weighing, or with the value of what this thing goes for, and how much he sells it for. Sarach l'saper, meaning he's going to overcharge him. Sarach l'saper es inyan achanus ha'hila zivish leikanisba. He's got to warn him about that store not to go in. Even if he made up that he's going to come into the store and he's going to buy from him, he's not bound. So you warn him not to go there. For instance, you see clearly that someone wants to trick his friend regarding merchandise. He tries telling him, this material is the best material you'll find in the world. And you know that it's not true. Or you know that he is trying to cheat him in weights, in measuring. Okay. Or regarding the value of the object, meaning he's going to overcharge him. You have to tell him. You have to warn him about it. You got to make sure that you're not missing any of the conditions mentioned previously. That he thinks over through is this person is really cheating him. He shouldn't say it more than it is. No exaggerating or no saying it. Just say it as it is. You have to do it for helping the person, not to get back the other person, and you know that it will help what you're doing, and that the other person is not good. The person who's basically losing out now doesn't lose out more than what the law, what halacha allows to happen. If all those conditions are met, then you should tell this person not to walk into the store because of the fact that either, again, you know this guy is going to cheat him, or you know specifically that the guy plans on cheating him. You need to warn him beforehand that he should not enter. Now, in the footnote, the Chavetz Chaim adds, here the Chavetz Chaim gets into something he's going to mention again soon in the next paragraph, and that is that there is a law called Ainah, which means cheating someone by overcharging. So the example he gives is, let's say there's an object worth $5, he calls a gold coin, so it's $5. Okay, that's the going price. And now you tell him $6. That means you're overcharging him a sixth of the price. So if that's what it is, that's called Ainah, that's called cheating. And actually, based on that, the person can basically say, deals off and give me back my money. Or at least has to give him back the amount. But then called Ainah, cheating, which again, affects the sale. So therefore, Chavetz Chaim says, well, if regarding that's how you know this person wants to cheat that person, then you for sure tell him. But if it's less than that, which really is not something that you can say that the seller is doing something wrong, you may know that the other guy doesn't like it, and maybe no one would like it, but at the end of the day, he's not doing something halachically wrong to him. Then he says, as a question, that maybe he shouldn't tell him. However, if the situation is the guy's cheating him in weights, and you know he's going to cheat him in the weight, even if it's a pound and it's not a pound, then that doesn't make a difference what the amount he's cheating him. If he is cheating him in regard to weights and measures, then no matter what the amount is, you let him know. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.